distinguished heads of delegation, ministers, ambassadors, Mr. President. Over these last few days, we have heard in this General Assembly two narratives. One, the discourse of the oligarchs and their satellites who seek to rule the world, and another, that of the dignified peoples who fight for their sovereignty and independence. The oligarchs, led by the government of the United States of America, are attacking the Charter of the United Nations to destroy this organization from both outside and within, and have nearly achieved this already. To this end, they promote the involvement of private corporations, non-governmental organizations, and other strategies that disregard the sovereignty of states. They have called this a rules-based order. Not satisfied with this, the oligarchies resort to political expressions that we thought we had already overcome, such as fascism and Nazism. These political currents of imposition and domination promote white supremacy, racism, xenophobia, and other forms of intolerance, normalized with the support of large international media monopolies and social networks. They are placed at the service of imperialism and neo-colonialism, ultimately supporting their plans to create tensions, fabricate conflicts, and pit peoples against each other. As we speak in this assembly, bombs are falling in Gaza, where Israel has murdered tens of thousands of girls, boys, women and men who are innocent, with the complicity of the governments of the United States of America and the European Union. The greatest crime of extermination and genocide since the one committed by Hitler in the Second World War is currently being carried out. Today they intend to export their hatred and destruction to an entire region, bombing and murdering innocent people in Lebanon and Syria as they try to destabilize the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is a genuine threat to humanity and world peace. A new form of terrorism has been doled out in Lebanon, where, with the complicity of private companies, that manage the supply chains of mass consumer technologies, it sets a severe precedent, putting global security at risk. They also bomb civilian infrastructure in that kindred country, killing innocent people just as they do in Gaza. Israel has truly become a death machine, which must be stopped at once. But instead of stopping the massacre and bringing those responsible to justice, those most powerful insist on expanding the war to Europe and other parts of the world through military blocs such as NATO. After the defeat of Ukraine in their Nazi adventure, they now intend to bring war and terrorism to Great Russia, which, as history has taught us, will always be victorious. NATO's expansion also threatens peace in South America with the installation of military bases with the complicity of the lackey governments of Argentina and Ecuador. Hate speech promotes and fosters terrorism in its various forms. For instance, from the very territory of the United States of America, attacks, assassination attempts, destabilization and attacks against sovereign peoples such as Venezuela are continuously planned. To this end, they have resorted to the use of information and communication technologies, especially social media, controlled by the empire's frontmen who fabricate psychological wars aimed at exploiting feelings of hatred and destruction without control of any sort. In addition to this, there are cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, including vital utilities, banking, oil, and electoral systems, as happened in my country on the 28th of July. Mr. President, how can progress be achieved on peace and security issues when the United States of America, whose government insists on providing a framework of impunity for violators of international law, hijacks the body responsible for maintaining peace and security? From this rostrum, we reiterate our unwavering solidarity with the kindred people of Palestine, whom we support with determination in their just cause and in all efforts aimed at preserving a clear political horizon, which preserves the viability of the two-state solution based on the pre-1967 borders. We welcome the fact that for the first time in the history of this Assembly, the delegation of Palestine sits with us as another state.
Hoy más que nunca.
Today, more than ever, it is urgent that we ensure their immediate, fully fledged membership of this organisation. We also wonder how the decolonisation agenda can be achieved if we insist on preserving a status quo that only benefits the occupying and administering powers. Our solidarity and firm support goes out to all peoples who are fighting for their inalienable right to self-determination, to achieve full independence and to be true masters of their own destiny, their lands and their resources. It is time that the yearning of freedom of our sisters and brothers in Western Sahara, Puerto Rico, New Caledonia, French Polynesia, Bonaire and so many other territories be finally realised. Venezuela has a profound anti-colonial vocation inherited from our independence struggle and the legacy of our liberator Simón Bolívar. Therefore, we embrace with determination all of these great causes, which we have historically assumed as our own. We are determined to contribute to the end of colonialism in all its forms and manifestations. Similarly, we will continue to demand the restitution of the sovereignty rights over the Chagos archipelago and the Malvinas Islands to the legitimate owners, namely the Republic of Mauritius and the Argentine Republic. Despite the betrayal of the cause of the Malvinas by the shameless Javier Milei, the brotherly people of Argentina can always count on Venezuela's solidarity and full support in this just and historic claim. President, even today the peoples of the world are still paying the price for the misfortunes left by the colonialism of empires such as the United Kingdom, which committed crimes on all continents and is now trying to erase from our memories this with total impunity. One of them, these harmful effects, which persists to date, is the disposition of Venezuela's sovereign rights over the Guayana Essequiba. This plunder originated in the expansionist and violent policy exercised by the British Empire in Venezuelan territory throughout the 19th century, sought to impose itself by fraudulent means in 1899 via a form of arbitration that was rigged between the powers of the day. On the 3rd of December 2023, the Venezuelan people expressed themselves clearly and decisively in an advisory referendum, granting an unavoidable and clear mandate to the Venezuelan state to recover the Guayana Essequiba, a territory that represents a sacred inheritance of the struggles of our liberators. In that referendum, the Venezuelan people ratified the historic position of our country of never recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice in this case, nor any decision it may adopt on that matter. The President of Guyana has lied on this rostrum in this connection. Venezuela only recognizes the Geneva Convention of 1966 as the only way to reach a settlement that restores Venezuela's rights over the territory of the Guayana Essequiba. Today, the United States of America and Guyana are in violation of the Joint Declaration of Argyll, threatening regional peace, security and stability through the military presence of extra-regional actors and the illegitimate granting of oil concessions in a non-demarcated maritime area. In this context, we take this opportunity to reiterate our firm commitment to the CELAC proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. It is time for Guyana to demonstrate its commitment to that proclamation, as well as dialogue, mutual respect, tolerance and understanding, thus returning to the Geneva Agreement. President, the illegal imposition of unilateral coercive measures against whole peoples by the United States of America and the European Union represents a flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and every norm of international law. These measures constitute massive violations of human rights, including the right to development, as well as crimes against humanity. We reiterate our call for the complete, immediate, and unconditional lifting of all regimes of so-called sanctions and blockades that today are enforced against more than a third of humanity, including 30 million Venezuelans. our solidarity with the sisters and brothers in Belarus, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Cuba, Eritrea, Iran, Nicaragua, Syria, Zimbabwe, and so many others who suffer the effects of these criminal policies day by day. Mr. President, dignified peoples fighting for their sovereignty and independence have also raised their voices in these spaces and must be heard. Venezuela today faces the onslaught of new forms of colonialism. For several years now, the government in Washington has been carrying out a neo-colonial experiment which aims to destroy our democratic system, our institutions, our sovereignty, our independence, and the inalienable right of our people to self-determination in every possible way. This is a large-scale recolonization plan that attempts, based on a continued coup d'etat, to destroy our republic. For its execution, all options have been and continue to be on the table. Since the cruel, inhuman enforcement of a ferocious economic, commercial and financial blockade with almost 1,000 sanctions, which has cost our nation more than $642 billion in the last 7 years alone, to which we must add the losses of our state oil company, in Spanish known by the acronym PDVSA, amounting to $232 billion, and the theft of 31 tons of gold deposited in the Bank of England, as well as of other important assets owned by the Republic abroad, not to mention the theft by Argentina and the Dominican Republic of aircraft in the service of the Venezuelan state. Venezuela is not the only one affected by this interventionism, which is deeply rooted in the colonialist tradition of the Monroe Doctrine, and which continues to cast a shadow over the expression of political independence on our continent. This is the case of brave Cuba and the blessed and always free Nicaragua. They also promote coup d'etat, as in Bolivia. They also promote coup d'etat, as in Bolivia, in 2019 and 2024. And they mercilessly attack, with support of local oligarchies, the government of President Gustavo Petro in Colombia and that of President Xiomara Castro of Honduras. Our firm support and unwavering solidarity with them too. President, on the 28th of July, as is customary in our revolutionary democracy, the Venezuelan people expressed themselves in a conscious, peaceful and massive manner to elect, with full guarantees, transparency and freedom, the Venezuelan head of state and government for 2025-2031. President Nicolás Maduro was re-elected with a clear and overwhelming majority. After this great popular victory, the oligarchy of my country resorted once again to disregarding of laws and institutions, triggering a criminal form of violence that left 27 dead, hundreds wounded, and the destruction of public and private property. With the use of criminal gangs, they set up barricades, burned schools, hospitals, and public institutions, and assassinated ordinary citizens for their political affiliations alone. None of this will be reported in the mainstream media. Worse still, neither does the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who, despite having received all of these facts about the criminal acts and the responsible actions deployed by the Venezuelan state, has preferred to turn the victims into perpetrators and the perpetrators into victims. Over the last 2 days, this fascist and disinformation campaign against our country has been spread from this rostrum. The government of the United States of America and its satellite and servile governments have dedicated themselves to lying, attacking and threatening our people from this place, which is a symbol of peace and understanding, by trying to impose a false narrative. But here we are once again to present the truth about Venezuela and our people. Today we come to unveil all of these charlatans. President, at the forefront of this huge operation is, as usual, the government of the United States of America and its agencies, as part of its failed policy of a continued coup d'etat against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which began more than 25 years ago. From their territory, and specifically the state of Florida, terrorist attacks against public officials and facilities are planned. they also use social networks with impunity and the full support of the White House to promote mercenary incursions, as already happened in May 2020. Although Washington denies involvement, this time they were caught red-handed. Investigations into the latest aggression plots have shown that several US and European mercenaries, including an active US military officer specializing in terrorist and destabilization operations, were behind the post-electoral violence. These criminals have confessed that they intended to assassinate President Nicolás Maduro, the executive vice president, and other senior Venezuelan state officials, as well as attacking critical infrastructure services such as water and electricity. We inform you that all have been arrested, including 2 people linked to Spain's National Intelligence Center. In addition, more than 400 rifles of different types have also been seized, some of them produced for the exclusive use of the US Armed Forces. In the coming weeks, our government will present additional and much stronger evidence of what happened, which we are certain will shock the world. President, an additional phase of this criminal plan of aggression has been developed in recent days through another group of mercenaries who opened a website in this country to openly raise funds to attack Venezuela and carry out assassinations. This initiative has the backing of US government agencies, US Congress members and senators. The hypocritical oligarchic narrative does not condemn such an aberration. In this context, it bears underlining the obligation of the states to ensure that their territory is not used to finance, plan, facilitate, or commit acts of destabilization through the use of mercenaries and terrorists. In this sense, we demand that the US government comply with its international obligations on this subject. We also have to emphasize that these terrorist plots, planned for months, took place at the very same time as the negotiations and signing of agreements between Venezuela and the United States of America in Doha in September last year, through which we sought to move towards a normalization phase of relations between the two nations. This is further proof that the empire's word and supposed goodwill cannot be trusted. The Venezuelan people demand the immediate fulfillment of all the commitments agreed in Doha, to lift all sanctions, unilateral coercive measures that illegally cast a shadow over our country, and we thank the government of the state of Qatar for its good offices as facilitator of these negotiations. Furthermore, and we have to say this, all of that is happening while the government of the United States of America, which promotes and finances criminal actions across the world, includes Cuba without any basis whatsoever on a spurious list of countries allegedly accused of sponsoring terrorism. We also demand an end to this attack against the homeland of Martí and Fidel, which further deepens the impact of the blockade. Mr. President, this new aggression against Venezuela that is still in full swing will have exactly the same destiny as all the previous ones, a resounding failure. Despite the psychological operations aimed at creating confusion, despite Washington's overt and covert operations within the framework of so-called maximum pressure, social peace reigns in Venezuela today. The plans to create violence have been overturned thanks to the determination of our people to defend their right to live in peace. Today, moreover, Venezuela has experienced growth that has allowed it to insert itself strongly into the world economy, contributing its strength to the production of energy, food and basic goods and services. This success has been possible thanks to the determination of the Venezuelan people and the firm leadership that has managed to see down the blockade. Mr. President, at this juncture, our call to the free and peace-loving peoples of the world is to strengthen unity in the face of those who want to divide us in order to achieve their plans of neo-colonial domination. It is the time for the global south. It is the time for the longed-for new world order. It is time to consolidate this new multipolar and multicentric world of peace and economic prosperity, free of hegemonies. It is time to rescue the founding principles contained in the UN Charter and to honour the promise that this organisation is at the service of we the peoples, as stated in its preamble. Venezuela puts its Bolivarian diplomacy of peace at the service of humanity to advance in that direction, as demonstrated by its leadership at the head of the Group of Friends in Defence of the Charter of the United Nations. These are the principles that constitute the narrative of free peoples, which are expressed in new forms of partnership based on the principles of solidarity and complementarity, as, for example, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America, or ALBA-TCP by its acronym in Spanish, and BRICS, as well as other hopeful prospects for the emerging New World Order, in which our country seeks to insert itself at an accelerated pace. President, let me conclude by emphasising that in Venezuela we are still on our feet, waging battles hand in hand with our people in a permanent popular organisation and mobilisation in the struggle to continue consolidating our independence. No matter who is at the head of the US empire that speaks before this rostrum in a year's time, you can rest assured that the clear and rebellious voice of the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela will continue to be present in this forum under the strong leadership of President Nicolás Maduro Moros, as we stand determined to resist US imperialism. As Bolivar said, God grants victory to those who enshow constancy. Thank you.
Muchas gracias al ministro.
Thank you to the Minister of People's Power, Foreign Affairs of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Doy ahora la palabra.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Frederick Makamure Shava, Minister